The SAVE Act, time to pass it. Surprising new January jobs report. Dismal report on America's public schools. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. I want to emphasize that I'm a commentator, not a reporter. These are my observations about happenings around the U.S. and the world. The SAVE Act, time to pass it. Democrats have revealed their stripes in grotesque fashion by opposing a bill that requires proof of citizenship and use of ID to vote. As I said, this is a 90-10 issue in our society. While it did pass the House, the future in the Senate looks bleak. That is, unless the GOP dumps the infamous filibuster. The Dems shut down part of the government for the third time in 6 months over nothing. This is pure posturing. The ironic part of the story is that ICE operations have a special budget. So while DHS is closed down, endangering critical services across America, including TSA in airports and FEMA for disasters, ICE can continue. At least I hear that the two sides are talking. I do get asked by some of my audience about what some consider to be my harsh view of Democrats. Well, for starters, this is not your grandparents' Dem Party. In fact, it's not your parents' Democrat Party. As a little kid, I lived near Boston. I remember the excitement when John F. Kennedy was elected president. I recall vividly the day of the assassination and the days of nationwide mourning. Nobody said we can't mourn him since he's a Democrat. A number of observers note that in today's society, he would be a middle of the road GOP member, not a Dem. The current Dem Party is catering to about 10% of the population, largely people who view themselves as socialists. If you're still voting for the Dems out of habit, you need to review what each candidate really stands for. I believe America is in trouble and is the fault of both political parties, not just the Dems. The challenge is that there is not a legitimate nationwide third or fourth party to support. In fact, I have predicted that America will eventually move to a multi-party system. Yep, in fact, the extremism of the current Dem leadership may drive the majority of current Dems to seek a new party affiliation. If they do not move to the GOP, perhaps there will be a new party closer to their interests. Surprising new January jobs report. Okay, I'm confused. In our last episode, I reported the numbers that have been reported by ADP for the private sector and that the U.S. only added 22,000 new private sector jobs last month. It would have been worse had healthcare and education not chipped in to balance things out just a little bit. Now, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports a decent gain of 130,000 new jobs. This featured job gains in healthcare, social assistance, and construction, while the federal government and financial activities lost jobs. Who's right? Well, I can tell you that the feds and especially the president are running with the BLS numbers. Only time will tell where things are heading. An encouraging sign is that the unemployment rate dropped to 4.3%, although this also reflects many people leaving the labor market due to lack of opportunity. Wage gains outstripped the modest inflation rate of 2.4%, so that by itself is a positive number. The reduced cost of fuel and housing is helping to moderate price increases. January home sales were down about 8%, which reflects limited housing supply, current mortgage rates over 6%, and while home prices are down, they are still much higher than in the years past. The supply is frustrated by high costs for construction materials and labor, ridiculous county and city administrative fees, and high real estate taxes and insurance. On the darker side, which may help to explain GOP losses late last year, job creation last year was downgraded from 584,000 to 181,000 for the whole year. This is a miserable performance. I note that I predicted that there would be at least a minor recession in 2025, regardless of who is elected president. While the economists did not hit their numbers to call it an official recession, the facts are slow job growth does reflect a slow economy. Dismal report on America's public schools. A new report by the Reason Foundation, which describes itself as a libertarian think tank, provides a lot of food for thought for taxpayers and especially parents. I want to start by saying that I strongly support public K through 12 education. However, despite my own kids going to public school for most of their developmental years, I see some of my grandchildren moving away from that model. I believe that public education for K-12 is the root to success of a society. We cannot put everyone in private schools. Parents do not have the money or the access to do so. However, the race to wokeness, largely driven by socialist teachers unions, has driven many parents to seek alternatives. Incredibly, Texas just passed a bill providing access for families to get financial help to go to private schools. What does the Reason Foundation report say? Something we all know, the taxpayers are paying a ton of money and getting less for it. In New York, it is spending just under $37,000 per student. In California, it is spending just under $26,000 per student. Overall, nationwide inflation-adjusted public school costs grew from $12,852 per student in 2002 to $16,065 per student in 2020. Where is the money going? Sadly, not teachers and better classrooms, but to something called staffing. Report after report shows eighth graders who are not nearly at grade in reading and math. How can so much money buy so little? For starters, there are dramatically fewer kids in our public schools. Enrollment is down by over 1.2 million students compared with pre-pandemic levels, including losses exceeding 5% in New York, Oregon, and Mississippi. And again, despite this, costs to the taxpayers continue to surge. No shocker here, continuing to spend more money has not translated into any improvement in student outcomes. Time has come to get things on track for our students and in turn our society. One, increased parental involvement. Parents were being arrested at school board meetings during the Biden-Harris administration. Fortunately, that stopped at the federal level, but we must encourage full participation. Two, parents need to be visible in their schools. Attend parent-teacher conferences, work with your kids, etc. Three, start focusing on teachers, not useless staff expansion. Four, rein in the teachers' unions. In Texas, they cannot strike. I would make public teacher unions unable to strike across America. Note that federal employee unions cannot strike. Five, focus on the 3 R's across the country. Six, return to discipline and respect for teachers. Speaking as a college professor, I won't teach college courses for first through third year students. Why? I found the students poorly prepared for college work, undisciplined and rude. Usually they figured it out by the time they hit senior year. Students need to understand the importance of education and discipline in K through 12. Don't be fooled about what you hear about AI. We all need to be educated enough to use that tool, not create junk. In the early days of computers, we would say GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. That still applies today. I regard education as just as critical to winning the current Cold War as military preparedness. They go hand in hand. Wendy's to close hundreds of locations. It seems that every week lately I have reports on well-known companies closing locations. I recently mentioned Kroger, for instance. And lo and behold, a modest Kroger not far from our CMG offices just closed down. Joining the trend, Wendy's will be closing hundreds of locations. It also announced it will refocus on value meal sales in response to weak fourth quarter 2025 sales results. There will still be plenty of locations as it has about 6,000 locations. Fast food chains have been hit by compression as food and labor costs have surged, causing them to increase their prices, coming closer to the fast casual chains and giving people more incentive to eat at home. I know many of the supermarkets here in Houston have a wide range of ready-to-eat meal boxes in the front of the stores these days. Just pop them in the microwave and keep rolling. I'm sure most Americans and most likely informed people around the world are aware of the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie, 84-year-old mother of Today host Savannah Guthrie. Rarely do we see in real life the pathos that this family is experiencing. I convey my support to their entire family, as I'm sure many of my audience members do as well. One of the places to protect are our schools. So the alarming reports of a shooting in a school touches a special place in our hearts, regardless of location. This time it was in the far north section of British Columbia in Canada. There, an 18-year-old biological male killed his mother and stepbrother and then went and killed six others and wounded 25 others in a small school that covered grades 7 through 12 in a rural village before taking his own life. The reports are that he had serious mental issues and was a trans female at the time of these horrible acts. I do not consider the trans issue to be the headline of the story, but I do express my concern that our society is not doing enough to provide effective mental treatment options, especially for our teens. There has to be a better way. And lest the focus stray, more killings by Islamic terrorists in Nigeria, who reportedly killed at least 160 people in Muslim villages of Woro and Nuku. While we've been covering the slaughter of Christians, it is important to note that moderate Muslims are also the target of these terrorists. No matter the gender and the nationality, the kidnapping or murder of any person is a crime against humanity. We must find a way toward peace in this world. Can Western culture survive? My news feeds have multiple articles weekly on horrible things happening, especially to young girls in England, France, and Germany. Often there is no punishment or little punishment for rapists and so-called groomers. The perps are uniformly from a specific batch of countries and have flooded into these European countries. I'm not sure of the motivation, other that some in political control felt it was their liberal obligation to take them. This was despite the fact that these new immigrants had no desire to assimilate into their new Western countries. A classic example this week was a man from Pakistan who raped a 13-year-old girl. His wife reportedly said he simply did not know this was illegal in England. Hey, this is simple. Deport his family now, imprison the perp for a long time, and then deport him the moment he steps out of that long prison term. Enough is enough. I am frankly shocked that these developed civilizations are allowing this chaos to continue. I do know that those who speak up in the UK, like I am doing in this report, are being jailed and persecuted for speaking the truth. I have the UK on my do not travel list until sanity returns. On the positive side, Sweden has recently announced some changes. Starting in June, you cannot become a citizen in Sweden unless you can speak Swedish. The conservative government there is going to increase the focus on new migrants wanting to become part of Swedish society. The migrants will have to be self-supporting and be good citizens for 8 years, not the current 5 years. Sweden's conservative government replaced the leftist government that oversaw a flood of migrants, which leads to increased crime and social problems. Perhaps we will see something similar across some of the other European countries, as I hope the majority of the populations of countries will rise up and start voting the right way. GLP-1 drugs blamed for possible scurvy problems. My wonderful audience members, I cannot make this up. Much of the developed world's population is dealing with obesity. It is predicted that in the USA that 1/3 of us will develop type 2 diabetes, absent some big changes. Then along came GLP-1 drugs. While they were expensive to start, given recent developments, the prices seem to be coming down. Also, originally administered by injection, pill forms are now coming out. Along comes a research study out of Australia that claims that GLP-1s may contribute to scurvy. Okay, so what's scurvy? Well, your host remembers from my high school courses that sailors in the 17th century on those early voyages around the world developed it due to lack of certain vitamins, especially vitamin C. That definition is still true today. Signs of it include tooth loss in severe cases, fatigue, and some skin abnormalities. The research report indicated that due to GLP-1 being so effective at reducing appetites, the patients are eating much less. This may in turn lead to the patients not taking enough vitamin C and other minerals. On my end, this would seem to be just a big sign that you're taking these drugs. You should be popping vitamin C, which is fairly cheap and readily available dietary supplement. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the BrushwoodMediaNetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.